page number 154, book number 1. We may not be able to sing all the lines.
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने
सुधिलो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी,
सुधिलो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी,
सुधिलो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी,
सुधिलो हमारी वृषभानु
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
सुधिलो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी,
सुधिलो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी,
भानु दुलारी,
भानु दुलारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
तुम भी मोही भूलो नहीं भानु दुलारी,
तुम भी मोही भूलो नहीं भानु दुलारी,
भानु दुलारी,
भानु दुलारी,
ओ तुम भी मोही भूलो नहीं भानु दुलारी,
तुम भी मोही भूलो नहीं भानु दुलारी,
मैं भी तो ही भूलू नहीं भूले हूँ प्यारी,
मैं भी तो ही भूलो नहीं भूले हूँ प्यारी,
मैं भी तो ही भूलू नहीं भूले हूँ प्यारी,
मैं भी तो ही भूलो नहीं भूले हूँ प्यारी,
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वाली,
ओ प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वाली,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वाली,
एक दिन सुनेगी भरोसा भारी प्यारी। सब लोग गाइए,
सुनेगी भरोसा
Clapping your hands.
भारी प्यारी,
एक दिन सुनेगी भरोसा भारी प्यारी,
एक दिन सुनेगी भरोसा भारी प्यारी,
भरोसा भारी प्यारी,
भरोसा भारी प्यारी,
एक दिन सुनेगी भरोसा भारी प्यारी,
एक दिन सुनेगी भरोसा भारी प्यारी,
छोड़ू नहीं पाछा प्रेम दे आना दे प्यारी,
छोड़ू नहीं पाछा प्रेम दे आना दे प्यारी,
ओ छोड़ू नहीं पाछा प्रेम दे आना दे प्यारी,
छोड़ू नहीं पाछा प्रेम दे आना दे प्यारी,
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वाली,
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वाली,
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वाली,
ओ बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वाली,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वाली,
तेरी कृपा में तो कछु कमी नहीं प्यारी,
तेरी कृपा में तो कछु कमी नहीं प्यारी,
ओ तेरी कृपा में तो कछु कमी नहीं प्यारी,
तेरी कृपा में तो कछु कमी नहीं प्यारी,
मैं ही नहीं कृपा का, मैं ही नहीं कृपा पाने का हूँ अधिकारी,
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 प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वाली,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वाली,
ओ प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वाली,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वाली,
तुझ सीना दाता नहीं मुझ सा भिखारी,
तुझ सीना दाता नहीं मुझ सा भिखारी,
ओ तुझ सीना दाता नहीं मुझ सा भिखारी,
तुझ सीना दाता नहीं मुझ सा भिखारी,
भुक्ति मुक्ति मांगू नहीं प्रेम दे दे प्यारी,
मुक्ति मुक्ति मांगो नहीं प्रेम दे दे प्यारी,
भुक्ति मुक्ति मांगू नहीं प्रेम दे दे प्यारी,
मुक्ति मुक्ति मांगो नहीं प्रेम दे दे प्यारी,
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वाली,
बरसाने वारी,
बरसाने वारी।
ओ प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी।
सुधी लो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी,
सुधी लो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी।
सुधी लो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी,
सुधी लो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी।
तो को दीन जन प्रिय, तो को दीन जन प्रिय भानु दुलारी,
तो को दीन जन प्रिय भानु दुलारी।
भानु दुलारी,
भानु दुलारी।
ओ तो को दीन जन प्रिय भानु दुलारी,
तो को दीन जन प्रिय भानु दुलारी।
ऐसी कृपा करो दीन बनु सुकुमारी,
ऐसी कृपा करो दीन बनु सुकुमारी।
ऐसी कृपा करो दीन बनु सुकुमारी,
ऐसी कृपा करो दीन बनु सुकुमारी।
ओ प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोली भारी बरसाने वारी।
सुधी लो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी,
सुधी लो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी।
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोली भारी बरसाने वारी।
सुधी लो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी,
सुधी लो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी।
तू ही मेरी मैं भी तेरी, तू ही मेरी मैं भी तेरी काहे माँ बिसारी,
तू ही मेरी मैं भी तेरी काहे माँ बिसारी।
काहे माँ बिसारी,
काहे माँ बिसारी।
ओ तू ही मेरी मैं भी तेरी काहे माँ बिसारी,
तू ही मेरी मैं भी तेरी काहे माँ बिसारी।
या तो आ जा या बुला ले पास निज प्यारी,
या तो आ जाया बुला ले पास निज प्यारी।
या तो आ जा या बुला ले पास निज प्यारी,
या तो आ जाया बुला ले पास निज प्यारी।
ओ प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी,
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी।
मोही निज दासी दासी, मोही निज दासी 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 करु प्यारी,
मोही निज दासी 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 करु प्यारी।
मोही निज दासी 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 करु प्यारी,
मोही निज दासी 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 करु प्यारी।
महल टहलिनी बना दे मोही प्यारी,
महल टहलिनी बना दे मोही प्यारी।
ओ महल टहलिनी बना दे मोहि प्यारी।
महल टहलिनी बना दे मोहि प्यारी।
बरसाने वारी
बरसाने वारी
भानु दुलारी।
भानु दुलारी
कीर्ति कुमारी
कीर्ति कुमारी।
प्यारी प्यारी भोरी भारी बरसाने वारी।
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 सुधीलो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी।
सुधीलो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी।
ओ सुधीलो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी।
सुधीलो हमारी वृषभानु दुलारी।
देऊ बुहारी जेहि मग चले प्यारी।
देऊ बुहारी जेहि मग चले प्यारी।
ओ देऊ बुहारी जेहि मग चले प्यारी।
देऊ बुहारी जेहि मग चले प्यारी।
मग चले प्यारी।
मग चले प्यारी।
देहू बिहारी जेहि मग चले प्यारी।
देऊ बिहारी जेहि मग चले प्यारी।
सेज सजाऊं जहाँ सोए सुकुमारी।
सेज सजाओ जहाँ सोए सुकुमारी।
ओ सेज सजाऊं जहाँ सोए सुकुमारी।
सेज सजाओ जहाँ सोए सुकुमारी।
ओ राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे।
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे।
ओ राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे।
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 राधे राधे गोविंद 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 गोविंद राधे।
गोविंद राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
ओ राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
ओ राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे Everyone clap your hands
राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
ओ राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
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 ओ गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
ओ गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
ओ राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
जय 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 श्री राधे
जय 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 श्री राधे
राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
जय 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 श्री राधे
जय 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 श्री राधे
राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
मेरी प्यारी राधे
मेरी प्यारी राधे
मेरी प्यारी राधे
मेरी प्यारी राधे
बरसाने वाली राधे
बरसाने वाली राधे
ओ बरसाने वाली राधे
बरसाने वाली राधे
भोरी भारी राधे
गोरी भारी राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
ओ गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद
ओ
राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
ओ गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोपाल राधे
गोपाल राधे
ओ राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
जय 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 श्री 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 राधे
गोविंद राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
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 राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे।
बोलिए अलबेली सरकार की
जय
श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की
जय
जय जय श्री राधे जय जय श्री राधे जय जय श्री राधे। So now I will be starting the discourse, continuing on from yesterday. But first, let me offer my respects unto the lotus feet of God and Guru. Guru Radhana Dishya Guru Paramadaivatam Guroh Partaram Nasti Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Vanshi Vibhushit Karan Navanir Dabhat Pitambara Daruna Bimba Faladharoshtat Purnendu Sundar Mukha Darvind Netrat Krishnat Param Kimapi Tattvamaham Na Jani Namah Kamalnabhaya Namah Kamalmalini Namah Kamalpadaya Namaste Kamalekshana Yo Brahmanam Vidhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tagvamha Devamatma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. So, dear devotees, yesterday we reflected on the various philosophies propagated by eminent philosophers, trying to solve the mystery of the mind, detaching it from the world in order to achieve their goal of eternal happiness. Amongst other things, the meaning of detachment, vairagya, was disclosed to you in depth, as well as the meaning of attachment, asakti, anurag. To reiterate, detachment means that state of the mind when the mind becomes freed of both the feelings of love as well as hatred, or the feelings of affection as well as malice or repulsion. And the opposite of detachment, of course, is attachment, asakti, anurag. And the precise meaning of attachment was disclosed to you as the unity of the mind with an object or a person with any kind of feeling, be it love or be it hatred. We came to the understanding that the mind is preoccupied as much with the person we detest, with the person we hate or dislike immensely, just as it is preoccupied with the person we love dearly. In reality, the mind is engaged as much by hatred as it is by love. So therefore, the personality who is thought of by the mind continuously again and again leaves a strong impression on the mind. And if that is a worldly person, so the point to bear in mind, as I stated yesterday, is if that is a worldly person, we will attain material results. And if that personality is divine, then the results will also be divine. You will attain the divine state after leaving this body. On the other hand, if you are attached to a worldly person, the result will be the attainment of this world and world alone. And this attachment will only and ultimately result in sorrow and suffering. And therefore, we came to the realization, nearing the end of the discourse, we came to the realization that the attachment of the mind to a divine personality, be it God or the saint, is desirable, is praisable with any kind of feeling, whereas attachment to a worldly person is deplorable, is regrettable in any condition, because it ultimately results in sorrow and suffering. So continuing on from where we left off, there's a wonderful story in the scriptures, in the Bhagavad. Jad Bharat, the story of Jad Bharat. Jad Bharat was a great jnani. He was an esteemed scholar who had crossed the 6 ladders of knowledge on the path of Gyan Yoga. And he had, which is extremely difficult to cross, to attain that state. But nevertheless, he had crossed the 6 ladders on the path of Gyan Yoga, on the path of knowledge, and he had just one more to cross before attaining complete liberation. But unfortunately, before crossing the 7th and the final ladder, Jad Bharat came across a young deer in the forest who was deprived of his mother's love. Bharat was performing his morning ritual. He was bathing in the river, and by chance, a frightened deer heard a roaring sound of a lion in the forest, and she jumped into the river. As she jumped, she gave birth to a baby deer. Now the mother died, but the young deer was saved by Jad Bharat. Jad Bharat was filled with compassion for the little deer. So he carried it home, carried him to the ashram, to the hermitage. And there he started looking after it day and night. Eventually he became so attached to the young animal that he could not think of anything else except the deer. Even at the time of death, his mind was completely preoccupied with the thoughts of the deer. And as a result, this very attachment became the cause of his ruin. And by the law of karma, by the law of nature, he was obliged to take birth as a young deer in his next life. So the point is, it can be concluded from this that in the practice of devotion, on the path of spirituality, that we must be neutral in the world. As Saint Kabir Das has beautifully stated, Kabira khada bazar mein sabki mange khair, na kahu so dosti, na kahu so bhair. In the marketplace, you see many places, you see many people come and go. And yet you remain indifferent to all of them. Why? Due to the absence of attachment. You're not attached to any one of them. So you remain neutral. So, once again, should be obvious by now that detachment means complete absence of both affection and malice, or love and hatred. So here now, the question arises, however, when there is no feeling of love or repulsion left in us, then our mind will automatically become detached, because that is the definition of vairagya. When the mind is freed of both the feelings. So when there's no feeling of affection or repulsion in us, then the mind will automatically become detached. In other words, it will become neutral. Now it can easily be molded towards God. But here again, a question arises that once both the feelings of affection as well as repulsion have vanished from our mind, then there will no longer remain any passion or craving for material objects or for material gratifications. According to the theory, let me remind you, no less craving, less suffering. Remember the philosophy explained by William James, that we should minimize our longing for material objects. In other words, we should minimize our desires. So less longing, less craving, less suffering, more longing, more suffering. No craving, no suffering, logically. So when there's no longer the feeling of affection or repulsion remaining in us, then at the same time, then the craving for material gratifications will also disappear, which is a very root cause of our suffering. This being the case, then the question that arises is this: why should we then surrender our mind to God? Detachment, vairagya in itself should be enough. Because we would no longer be suffering, we would no longer be hankering for material gratifications, which are the root cause of our suffering. But this is where we are wrong. You see, first of all, even if the mind somehow becomes detached from the world and it has not yet been attached to God, it will again go back to the world. Why? Because nahi kashchit sharmabhi jatu tishthatya karmakrit. As the Gita states 3:5. According to these words of the Gita, the mind cannot remain inactive for even a moment, its nature being dynamic. Therefore, attachment to God is of the utmost importance. In other words, as we detach our mind from the world, we must simultaneously, at the same time, attach it to God, direct it towards God. Otherwise, the mind will again go back to the world. That's the first point. Secondly, our desires and passions can only be suppressed. They can only diminish. They can only be dimmed. They can only fade. They cannot be destroyed altogether. It is impossible to get rid of them altogether as long as we are under the control of Maya, this material energy. As long as there is Maya, there will exist ignorance with all its attributes, with all its vices, such as anger, greed, lust, pride, enviness, jealousy, hatred, ego, etc., etc. So that's the second point. Thirdly, not until God realization. These vices do not disappear completely, in other words, until we realize God. And thirdly, which leads to the third point, and that is that our aim of attaining happiness cannot be achieved unless we achieve God. Why? Let me clarify through an example. Suppose there is a deer that is running in the desert in the hope of finding water. If somehow or the other the deer is made to understand that all its efforts are in vain, are wasted, since there's no water in the desert, the deer will stop running. There's a great chance the deer will stop running. However, its thirst will not be quenched until it actually finds water. Precisely in the same manner, our aim of attaining happiness cannot be fulfilled by merely knowing the way to do it or by merely detaching the mind from the world. No. We must, at the same time, go directly to the source. We must take our mind directly to the source, and that is the Supreme Personality of God, who is the source of all happiness. He is the infinite reservoir of unlimited, infinite, immeasurable, eternal, ever-existing, everlasting happiness, bliss. So we must take our mind directly to the source, and that is the Supreme Personality of God. Now the next question that arises is who will tell us about God as to who He is, what He's like, where He is. It is useless to ask our fellow beings about God because they are just as ignorant as we are. Andhe naiva niyamana yatha andhaha. Mundukopanishad 128. The Upanishad states, that would be like the blind leading the blind. We will stumble and fall, never to reach our destination. So before we surrender our detached mind to God, we require the help of a guide, a spiritual guide. Why? Because we must acquire tattva gyan, spiritual knowledge, in the process of self-surrender to Him. Someone who can answer our questions, clarify our doubts, address the problems that we are likely to face in the process of self-surrender to God. Someone who can tell us about the various paths that can be followed and which among these paths is the most suitable for us and which one is the easiest, why and how, etc., etc. Someone who can educate us in all these spiritual matters. Because we know that countless individual souls in the past have become saints. They have become God-realized. They have surrendered to God. And they have become saints by surrendering to Him. How? By first surrendering to a saint, a spiritual master, or the entity known as the Guru. Because the scriptures reveal to us that it is almost impossible to surrender our mind to God without first surrendering it to a bona fide, a genuine saint, a spiritual master, a Brahmanisht Mahapurush. The Guru has been recognized by the scriptures as the indispensable link between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul. The Vedas state, Acharyavan Purusho hi Ved. He can be known only through a saint, the grace of a saint. The Bhagavad also states, Tasmad Gurum Prapadyet Jigyasu Shreya Uttamam Shabde Pareja Nishnatam Brahmanyupashamashrayam 11.321. Meaning that one can realize God through a Shrotriyam Brahmanisht. In other words, one can realize God through one who possesses not only a theoretical knowledge of the scriptures, but more importantly, a practical experience of God. So the most important aspect or the main qualification of the Guru is the practical experience. For example, suppose there's a beggar and we ask this beggar to give us $1 million. Of course, that would be foolish. But we ask him to give us $1 million and he has only 50 cents. The most he can give us is 50 cents. How can he give us more? In the same way, the scriptures specify at many places that our real purpose in life, the ultimate aim of this human life, can be solved only through one who himself has attained perfection, has attained God realization, who himself has attained that unlimited divine bliss. In other words, after detaching the mind from the world in an attempt to surrender it to God, we still require the guidance of a spiritual master, a guru. All the scriptures, from the Vedas to the Ramayana, have emphasized the need of a guru. Guru binu hoi ki gyan, Guru binu bhavanidhi tarai na koi, jo viranchi shankar sam hoi, etc., etc. All the scriptures. Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Gita 4:34. And the Vedas define the Guru as Gumrauti iti Guru, Ginati Jnanam iti Guru, Girati Ajnanam iti Guru. He who imparts the true knowledge of God, eliminates darkness, and destroys our ignorance is called the Guru. It is only through the guidance of a guru, the scriptures repeat again and again, that it is only through the guidance of a guru that one can attain the divine knowledge of God. And what is the present state of our mind? Instead of being concentrated on God, it is mainly concentrated on the world. We are looking away from God. We are positioned like the number 63. The saints give that example. We are like the number 63, facing away from God. So the scriptures say all we have to do is turn towards Him and our problem will be solved. All we have to do is like become the number 36, facing Him. However, this is nearly impossible for worldly souls to do on our own. So this is where the saint comes in. What does he do? He transforms our attachment to the world to detachment from the world. He channels all our worldly attachments towards God. And the pains, the hardships taken by a saint in performing this most difficult task is beyond our comprehension. It is beyond human comprehension. But nevertheless, the saints continue to do what they're supposed to do. There's a wonderful story in the scriptures. In fact, in the life history of Gaurang Mahaprabhu. Gaurang Mahaprabhu, as you know, was the descension of God Himself, who appeared a little over 500 years ago in Navadvip village of West Bengal, India. So once an argumentative sort of man went to Gaurang Mahaprabhu and confessed, having thought ill of him. He was honest. So he told Mahaprabhu that his mind was full of doubts as to Mahaprabhu being a genuine saint. Many people in the world are like this man. As soon as we see a saint, our mind goes to work. Well, we think, well, he looks like a saint. There's definitely an aura about him. He seems to be a saint, but no, he's not. Look at him. He's wearing such nice clothes. He's sitting on such a nice, comfortable chair. He can't be a saint. And yet there's something special about him. So this man was the same. So Mahaprabhu told him that it is extremely difficult for a doubting individual, for a doubting mind to realize God. The man became curious. He asked Mahaprabhu, just how long does it take? How long will it take for someone like me? Mahaprabhu pointed to a tree in the courtyard and he said, in a general sort of way, that you would realize God in as many lifetimes as there are leaves on that tree. Now, like I said, Mahaprabhuji had said this in a general sort of way, but the man took him very seriously. He was thrilled to know that his situation was not completely helpless, that he would also, sooner or later, one day, realize God. When Mahaprabhu saw the man's faith, he again changed his statement. He said, no. In fact, I think you'll realize God in just a few lifetimes. Again, the man took Mahaprabhuji's word for it and did not even think to question him about the change in the statement. When Mahaprabhuji saw the man's faith, he again changed his statement. He said, no, I think you will realize God in this very lifetime, in fact. The man had genuine faith, thinking that he would realize God in just one lifetime. He became ecstatic. You see, a saint does not look at he looks at the present condition of our heart, of our mind, the present state of our mind. He does not look at our past, how many sins, how many offenses we have committed in the course of our countless past lives. No. So the man, thinking that he would realize God in only one lifetime, he became ecstatic. He started singing and dancing like a madman. He was so overwhelmed, and finally he lost consciousness. The man had, when Mahaprabhuji noticed that the man had complete faith in him, then he instantly blessed him with his unlimited divine grace, that very moment. So, in other words, the man who had come to argue with Mahaprabhu left as a God-realized soul that very day. Such is the grace of a saint. Such is the nature of a saint, a true saint. So what does it mean? It means that if we approach a saint with faith and reverence, he can take us to God. He will take us to God and clean the vessel of our heart. He will purify our heart for it to become acceptable to God. Because it is the law of God that He only accepts those that are pure at heart. Nirmal man jan so mohi pava, mohi kapat chal chidra na bhava. So who does the job, the dirty work of sweeping and cleaning dirt from our hearts? The saint. It is the Guru who does the work of cleaning layers upon layers of dirt from our hearts. So it is said, if it were not for him, we would never be able to realize God. In fact, the scriptures give the spiritual master so much importance that it seems that he's superior to God. It seems that at some places, it is said that he's even greater than God in this respect. Guru Govind do khade kaake lagu paye, balihari Gurudev ki jo Govind diyo milaye. And similarly, the scriptures go even one step further. They say, Bhakti Bhakt Bhagavant Guru Chatur Nama Vapuek. Devotion, devotee, God, and Guru are four names of one entity. What to speak of just God and the saint? So, you see, God and the saint are in fact both one and the same supreme entity. It is said that God Himself incarnates on this earth in the form of the saint, in the form of the Guru, in order to take worldly souls like us across the ocean of Maya and to His divine abode. And the Vedas also tell us the same. Naraji says, Tasmin stajjane bheda bhavat. And Vedas are also in agreement. Brahmavit brahmaiva bhavati. The Vedas say, he who attains, who gains the knowledge of God, becomes like God. Tasmin stajjane bheda bhavat. Naraji says, there's no difference between God and a saint, both are equal. And the Vedas further state, Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha gurau tasyaite kathita hyartha prakashyante mahatmanah. 623 Shweta Ashwatra Upanishad. The Upanishad states that one must worship one's spiritual master in exactly the same manner in which he worships God. And it is only the individual who worships both equally who attains supreme divine happiness, divine knowledge, and divine happiness. This is the Upanishads are the essence, contain the essence of the knowledge of the scriptures. Lord Krishna himself tells Uddhavji Maharaj from the Bhagavatam, the shloka we recite in the Vandana, Acharyam mam vijaniya navamanyet karhichit namartya buddhya suyet sarvadeva mayo guru. 11:17-27. Know the Guru to be myself. Never disrespect him. Do not find fault with him. Do not use your material mind and intellect to comprehend his divine actions. For all forms of God dwell within the Guru. Such is the importance of the Guru in the life of a true aspirant on the path of spirituality, on the path of devotion. And what does the Guru tell us about the various paths leading to God? Let me briefly shed some light on this subject. As the scriptures also state, that there are three main paths leading to God. There are three ways to attain Him, the scriptures tell us, and they are the path of action, karma yoga, the path of knowledge, jnana yoga, and the path of devotion, bhakti yoga. The Devi Bhagavad Puran states, Margastrayo me vikhyata moksha praptau nagadhip karma yogo jnana yogo bhakti yogascha sattama. Three ways to attain Him. Let us first take a quick look at the path of action, karma yoga. What do the Vedas tell us about karma yoga in a nutshell? Dharmo mad bhakti krit proktaha. The Bhagavad states, only those actions performed in a devotional spirit to God can lead us Godwards. All other actions, no matter how pious, all other actions, pious actions that is, can only offer us heavenly gratification, heavenly pleasures, the nature of which, as you know, is limited and temporary. The pleasures, heavenly celestial pleasures, are temporary as well and limited. They're not endless. And furthermore, the Bhagavatam explains that even a properly performed Vedic ritual is worthless. A properly performed Vedic ritual, like a religious ceremony, a fire ceremony, any form of any ceremonial worship, form of worship to God, like a yajna, etc., is useless if it does not produce love for God in your heart. Vedavyas has beautifully defined the term karma, the word karma, in 1/4 of a verse, Sanskrit verse in the Bhagavad. He says, Tat karma haritosham yat. Tat karma haritosham yat. Karma is that which conduces, which leads to the pleasure of Sri Hari. In other words, actions performed in a loving devotional service to God in order to please Him are true actions, is karma, is real karma. All other actions, though they may be performed with strict observance of Vedic rules and regulations, are useless if they are devoid of devotion to God, if they're devoid of love for God. Such a beautiful definition. Karma is that which conduces to the pleasure of Sri Hari. So in other words, in conclusion, Vedavyasa states in the Bhagavad that the path of karma yoga, is effective in the process of God realization only when it includes devotion, when it includes devotion to God as well. And what about the other paths, the path of Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga? So we need more time to reflect on that subject. So I will pause here and continue on with this topic tomorrow. Until then, Bole Vrindavan Bihari Lal ki
Jai.
Srimad Sadguru Sarkar ki
Jai.
Jai Jai Shri Radhe Jai Jai Shri Radhe Jai Jai Shri Radhe